What were we talking about?
So we were basically just talking about, you know what, let me click record on this thing too in case one of us loses our video or audio. So we were kind of just talking about like the value that each of our channels provides, and I was saying that what I really like about your channel, besides your magnificent hair, is 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 basically like I can relate to it a lot, having been someone that was like in Waterloo that felt like they were constantly at the bottom of the barrel. I watch your videos and it's like you're basically saying all the things that I thought. You're like, hey man, like we all have this like crazy imposter syndrome where we think that we're not like good enough to be where we are. And especially it's such a massive thing for people at Waterloo because they're already like cream of the crop, that when they come to Waterloo, they expect that will just stay the same, and it doesn't. So it's a really hard thing to digest for a lot of people, which was like definitely happened to me.
Yeah, it was like I kind of did this weird thing where like I got my first test back and it wasn't what I expected it to be, and I pretty quickly got used to. I was like, sweet, I don't have to get 90s anymore. Like I'm already here in Waterloo. This is chill.
Yeah.
But then I think when I really started feeling it the most is like during internships and stuff, because as you know, there's some crazy first years that are signing like Google for their first internship, and I'm not getting any interviews, and that's as hard like when you're comparing yourself to people that are like that all the time.
Oh, definitely, man. That's 100% true. And I don't know what I saw a video that you posted the other day about like how you got into programming. So it seems like you had some programming experience before you went to Waterloo. But for me, I had literally like, well, it's not literally zero, but I had like practically zero. So I basically like didn't even apply to programming positions on my first internship. And I think it was a way of me like, I wasn't confident, I wasn't comfortable. I thought if I was in a real office environment, I would panic and I wouldn't even know where to start in terms of coding, learning new languages and stuff. So I didn't even bother applying to those jobs. Looking back, I think that was definitely the wrong choice, because when you go to an internship, you're supposed to learn, you're supposed to not really know what you're doing. But for me, I was like, I saw those people that were doing well, that had programming experience, and I kind of just thought like, why even bother?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. I think I had the opposite experience when I first applied to internships, which was like I saw all these people applying to Google, so I was like, yo, if I apply to the companies that are like right below Google, I'll get in for sure, man. Like I know how to code. People are gonna look at my resume and think I'm sick, and that didn't work out. That was not a good strategy.
Definitely. It's funny. Like I always tell people, we kind of have this idea that like as humans, our brains are kind of so limited that we have this tendency to put ourselves on a one-dimensional scale, and that would be like in terms of one number between 1 to 10. So we do it with everything: intelligence, like attractiveness, everything we think of on a scale of 1 to 10. So you think of yourself as like, hey, I'm probably first year, I'm probably like an 8 in terms of first years, or I'm a 9. And so if I apply to companies, they will put me above the 7s, the 6s, the 5s, and so on and so forth. So when you don't get that job, you're like, oh my God, maybe I'm a 4. But the truth is there's so many variables that go into any single job. The person that looks at it, maybe the person that's reviewing resumes isn't even technical. Maybe they just like know a few keywords. Maybe it doesn't pass the ATS system. There's so many things that are at play. What about the mood of the person that's like looking at the resumes? Maybe they're just in a bad mood and they like, I don't know, one sentence on your resume rubbed them the wrong way. There's so many variables that you can't put yourself on this one-dimensional scale. And when you do, it really like it's detrimental to your mental health, I think.
Oh, 100%. And I think like there's a few companies out there that try to look at more than just like the standard like leak code, what you've done, stuff on the resume. And that's when I really appreciate it when they try to hire the person rather than the resume, which is
right.
Just kind of rare, but it happens sometimes.
Yeah, I remember one of my internships, my boss was doing like, interviews for the next intern to replace me. And he had a bunch of different applicants. And some of them were like, they had all 80s. And one of them in particular had like failed a course. And or maybe had only pulled off like a 55 in a course or something. And he really liked her resume. He just thought that she would be a fun person to work with. He kind of, from her resume, kind of inferred that she was kind of a fighter. You know, she was putting up a fight. She was doing her best, and she just didn't come out of that course with a win. You know, and that happens to all of us. And so he really wanted to interview her, but his boss was like, hadn't looked at any of the resumes, was really surface level, and was kind of just like, no, you're not allowed. Look at that person. Like, they don't have good enough grades. So even if people do like you and do like your resume, it's not always up to them.
That's true. That's just another factor, I guess, that complicates getting hired.
Definitely. Let me see what we got here. So I want to ask you about your story, like, because I know that you are still in school right now. I believe you're doing an internship right now. So can you kind of like fill me in of everything Adam Wong up until now?
Yeah, I can try my best. Like starting from like high school or like university.
Wherever you think like the story begins.
Oh, okay. Yeah, starting in like, I guess, grade school, I kind of developed an interest in programming. You can learn more about that on my channel, but
yeah,
it was like to start making Minecraft mods originally, but I didn't think that I would be doing that as a career. And slowly I kind of discovered I didn't like memorization and that I preferred to think through problems, which is kind of what coding is. So I joined the robotics team. I started writing competitions, and eventually I got into Waterloo. It was like probably in grade 11 when I started trying to do that. So I wasn't like someone that had targeted Waterloo from the time they were in grade school, which I know exists now, which is absolutely nuts. Then once I was in university, I like didn't really perform that well in my grades, and I managed to get an internship through a connection that I had, which was like nepotism, but a job is a job. And it was like, it was a great experience. It was a super small company. I'm like I'm still very grateful for the opportunity that I had. And like when I came around to my second round of applications in second year, I did a little bit better because I was a little bit smarter about the jobs that I chose to apply to. Like first year, I applied to like FAANG, obviously got rejected, and then went with like a connection. Second year, I think I maybe undersold myself a bit and just applied to like everything where I met the requirements. And
right,
if you know about applying to internships, the requirements are kind of bullshit. Like sometimes they'll be like, you need 3 years of like PhD experience to be able to apply to this junior job. It doesn't make any sense. And I was going alphabetically too, so I ran out of jobs by the time I got to like the letter E or something. Yeah, my grades still weren't really that good. And in third year, I think I started to get my act together a bit more, focusing more on grades. I started to realize that they were more important than I had thought, not because of like recruiters necessarily looking at them, but just because like in a symbolic way, like if you're not committed to like, you know, doing well in one area, you can't expect to do well in other areas where
for sure.
And if I had just been getting those grades and not trying and was trying difficult, I can't speak. If I had been getting those grades and was trying really hard, then I think that's when grades don't matter. It's like, if you could be doing better and deep down you know that you could be doing better, but you're just not giving it like 80, 90, 100%, then you can't expect to be doing well in like other areas. Then
definitely,
I applied to Shopify and I got pretty lucky. I attached like a clip of my band playing onto the header of like my cover letter. And
oh, cool.
Yeah, someone liked it. They thought like, oh, that's unique. We'll give him an interview. And once I got the interview, like it was all kind of good from there.
You know what's funny? I feel like you said two things there that are like massively conflicting. You said that you got a job at Shopify and you were lucky, and then you said I did this really unique thing that made me stand out. So I don't think you were lucky. I think that was you, man.
Thanks, man. I haven't looked at it that way. I always looked at it as like I was lucky because they decided to click the YouTube link or whatever, and it was like a weird thing. But actually, you're probably right. Like, I think if people did stuff like that or attached their art or something, I think that is a good way to show them that you're like, you stand out, as well as that you're a more well-rounded person than just a programmer. Not that there's anything wrong with being a programmer, but like there's like definitely a certain type of person that is super prevalent in Silicon Valley. And I think a lot of tech companies are trying to like diversify their workforce a little bit and look for people with like broad interests.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, you have to work with these people, and a lot of the time it's like you're not just working with other programmers. You might be working with like designers and product managers and all that kind of stuff. They want to like enjoy working with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like it creates a great culture as well. For instance, with music at Shopify, there was like the band room, and I made tons of friends just going there and jamming with other interns or with full-timers. And like, it helps create like the company culture that tech companies before the pandemic were really striving to create.
Yeah.
Then when I was...
So I cut you off. Yeah. So continue.
Yeah. When I was at Shopify, I got pretty lucky again. This time I do think it was like luck, but one of my intern friends had just previously interned at Square and was like, hey, would you be interested in a referral? So I said yes. It was like all very last minute. They were looking for someone to fill like a term that I think some people might have dropped out, or they had more positions than they thought they would. So, because it was like 2 months before the term started, and usually like internships you're already interviewing by that point. But
right.
They decided to interview me. Apparently my YouTube channel did help because of that. And I did pretty well in the interviews and worked for Square. And then, after that, went back to school, and now I'm back at Shopify, and that is like present. So that's the backstory.
Nice. So this is your fifth co-op?
Yes. I had to count there in my head. Yes, my
It's like we're in the math faculty and we're like, wait a second.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3.
Cool. Yeah, that's really interesting, man. I feel like for my last co-op, because you can finish and graduate on 5 co-ops, right? At least in the math faculty, I know you can. So I almost did that. Like, I was in your position. I was like coming up to the end of my degree, and I was like, you know what? Screw it. Why don't I just graduate early, start making money early, start my career early? And I reached out to somebody I previously worked with at a startup called Toast in Boston. Mm-hmm. When I was there in Boston, they were opening a new office in Dublin, and I was like, I'm actually from Ireland. Like, I have an Irish passport and everything. Cool. So I was like, how cool would it be if I got to like go to the Dublin office? I could like live there. I could live with my cousin, and I would just have a blast in Dublin for like 4 months. So I reached out to him, and luckily things worked out. And I was working at the time in Silicon Valley at Yahoo, and my income was cut in half. Like, I made so much less money in Dublin, but I was like, this would be a really cool experience. Mm-hmm. This to me seems like a reasonable reason to postpone my graduation, like this, international experience, even if it is from my home country. So then I did that, and I was really happy about that. I thought that was a really cool experience. So if you have the opportunity to live in like a different country, I would say definitely take it.
That's good to hear, man. Like, I was actually wanting to do something like that, and I was just not sure what entails. I know the rest of the world does not pay close to the U.S. Salary-wise, but if everything is like that there, then it all kind of balances out, I guess.
Yeah, I think the thing is that like, I was really worried about income too, because I didn't have parents that just paid for my degree, so I had like a line of credit, and well, not a line of credit. I had like a bunch of debt, so I was like, well, if I go here, I won't be able to pay off as much debt. And I did it anyway. And then with like my first job at Microsoft, like my signing bonus paid my entire debt. So when it comes to Canada, if you're going to be like, you know, if you're going to be going to a big company or something like that, if you live in Canada, you go to Waterloo, your fees aren't really that much in comparison to like in America. And your co-op, like maybe your co-op doesn't completely pay for everything, but when you get that signing bonus, if you go to like a company, you kind of, you know, pull the signing bonus out of them, you'll probably be fine. You'll pay off your degree within a year at least if you're really like on it.
That's good to hear, man. That's like that quells some doubts. What did you think of living in a different country while like working in tech?
It was much different. So what I've noticed in America is kind of like, at least the teams I've worked on, even at Microsoft, even at Toast, the team was generally a little bit older. So maybe like they were early 30s or, you know, early 40s. They have families. They want to go home to their kids every night. But when I worked in Dublin, every single like Friday, even sometimes throughout the week, people would be like, "Hey, do you want to go get a pint after work?" And I'd be like, "Sure, that sounds like a lot of fun." So sometimes I would even go to the gym and I would be walking to the bus from the gym and they would be on a patio and they would spot me and they'd be like, "Jason, come over here right now." And then I'd be out till like 2:00 in the morning with my gym bag. So it was a lot more fun because the people in general just wanted to like have more fun. And I don't know if that was a product of it being in Ireland, which I think played some role, or if it was just a product of the team being a bit younger.
That's really cool, actually. That sounds like a culture that a lot of tech companies could benefit from. There's
yeah.
I'm not sure if it's as much like that there. It sounds like it's not, but as you know, there's a kind of a workaholic culture. It's not like people look at tech and they think it's a bunch of people just chilling all the time because of the way it looks surface level. But the corollary of that is that people are at the office for like they go in and they leave super late because there's so much stuff at the office. They might have some beers together, but it'll be at the office if they're doing it, like during town hall or something. Point. So it's kind of nice to see that there was an out of work culture in Europe that people.
It's funny. It was actually the opposite. So good point to bring that up. For Ireland, it was like they forced people to work 9 to 6. If you came in before 9 or if you came in after 9, you wouldn't get in trouble, but there would be like a few eyes, and it would be 9 to 6. So the minute 6:00 struck, people are like walking out the door. It's like in The Office. You remember The Office? It was like, if you've ever watched the show, it's like everyone gets up at exactly 5:00 and leaves. It's like that there, but it was at 6:00.
Huh. That's kind of cool. It's weird like hearing that tech is different around the world. Would you ever consider going full-time in Europe?
I would consider it, but honestly, like the pay is just so different that I think it's better as a short-term thing. Like maybe if Trump doesn't concede the election and America like descends into civil war, maybe I'll move there. That passport will come in handy, but for now I think I'm pretty comfortable here. So one of the things I noticed in your videos was you're talking about your sleep schedule. And I did a video where I was like tips to survive at Waterloo or to thrive at Waterloo. And one of the things I missed that I think was really important was the sleep schedule, which I think you talked about in one of your videos. Can you tell me like how that kind of impacted your life when you started taking that seriously?
Yeah, that was actually like super life changing. Your brain just doesn't work when it's not getting enough sleep. And I bought this thing called an Oura ring, which like measures your sleep. I'm not sure how accurate it is, but it's like accurate enough. And one thing I noticed is that I actually get an hour less of sleep than I actually spend in bed. So if I'm going to be asleep from like 11 till 7, then I'm actually sleeping from like, I guess the equivalent of like 11 till 6 or something. So I'm getting one less hour, which seems like it wouldn't make a huge difference, but 8 hours of sleep to 7 hours of sleep actually is a big difference. So, in first year, I was a classic first year, like up till 3 a.m., like doing assignments, had like the Red Bull and everything to try to get through stuff. Okay. And in second year, I think I started taking my sleep more seriously because I realized it was just really difficult to get up in the morning, which I was thinking that it probably just shouldn't be that painful to get up, whether you're a morning person or not. It was like impossible. And I also wasn't getting started on work till the afternoon because I was just asleep for the entire morning. Once I started like focusing on my sleep more, I'd say like a lot of that cleared up. I could wake up easily, make it to classes easier, and I was more efficient in my work. I could do things the first time without just sitting there letting the gears turn. So it's definitely an underrated like performance enhancer, and one that I think culture doesn't appreciate because there's a really big grind mentality, or like, oh, I got less sleep than you. I only sleep 4 hours a night.
Exactly. Dude, it's funny. There really is that like kind of pissing competition where it's like people are bragging about how little sleep they got. And it's funny, I like that you kind of called it a performance booster, because people will actually physically take Adderall, but they won't sleep. It's like, come on, man. You're doing one thing that's completely unnatural for your body, and another thing that is natural for your body, but you won't do it, which is also probably going to enhance your performance enough that you wouldn't need the drug in the first place. I noticed a big change in my life too, because I was in first year. Everyone is kind of the same. Everybody wanted to be like the most macho, I don't sleep kind of person. And in second year, I was kind of like, man, this is stupid. I'm tired. I just want to sleep. And I started like waking up early and having like a very consistent alarm. And after that, my grades like started to go up. Like I was low 70s in first year, and I don't even know how I pulled off low 70s. I thought I was going to fail for sure. Probably my electives that were really easy pulled my grade up. And then by the last year, I had like over an 80 average. And the biggest change was my sleep schedule, for one. And for two was my starting assignments much earlier. You know, I think... I don't know if you had the same experience in first year, but I was like racing up to the very end of the deadline every single assignment. And I was like, how is this like going to work? This isn't like a sustainable model for me to keep doing. Like me and my friends are like pounding away at our computers. It's like 5:58 and we're just testing our code on Marmoset. Like this isn't going to continue to work. So I shifted the whole model, started it the day it came out, and then had like a few buffer days at the end, and that like dramatically changed my grades.
Yeah, that was a big thing for me as well. Deadlines, like there's a weird cycle you get in where once you get to the point where you're like up to a deadline with one assignment, I feel like every assignment after that is going to be the same. You can change it. You just have to like work really hard, but because you're like focusing all your attention on one class up until that first deadline, you completely forget about every other assignment, and then you have to do the same thing for the next one in order to get that done for the deadline. And it's just like, I feel like grades are lower because you have less time, but also it's just way more stressful than it has to be. It takes off so much stress, and life becomes like way more enjoyable when you just do things earlier.
Definitely, man. There's really that cascading effect where it's like you find yourself in this routine that you're like, this is not sustainable. I'm so stressed all the time, but I feel like I don't even know how to get out of it because I put myself in it. So I think one of the pieces of advice my dad gave me when I started university is he said like, hit the ground running, start studying on day one. And I remember doing that. I was like reading over Math 135 notes day one, and people were like making fun of me, and I didn't understand them at the time. The first time I studied Math 135, I was still like, bro, this doesn't make sense for the longest time. But the extra bit of reminding myself what's going on in Math 135 throughout the course was the only reason I passed it. So I think a lot of people get excited to go into university, and they like focus on the friendships, and which is really important, but they focus on maybe drinking if that's a thing for them, and they leave the study behind. But like, day one, I hit the ground running, studying, and I was even struggling to keep up, you know?
Yeah. I mean, when I first went in, I had a plan to do a little bit every day, but it ended up not working out because the difficulty of everything was like ramped up from high school. So I didn't end up doing a little bit every day because it's not a little bit every day that you should be doing. It's more than a little bit. But my expectations for how much a little bit was I think not completely in line with what Waterloo thought doing a little bit of work was.
Yeah. Waterloo was like a massive wake-up call. Like, I used to think I worked hard in high school, and then I went to Waterloo and I was like, oh my god, high school was easy. Yeah. Like, this is hard, man.
Yeah, it's kind of like there's a lot of strategies that I feel like if I went back to first year now, I would just kick so much ass.
Yeah.
Like, even if I forgot everything I know, so like wipe my knowledge of the actual classes, but let me keep my like life knowledge when I go back into first year. And I feel like I could like just kick its ass, like not be stressed, actually enjoy first year a little bit more.
Man, I feel the exact same way, and I couldn't agree more. I think about that all the time. I have a question I wanted to ask you about the dreaded Cali or bust. So, did you or have your friends ever done the Cali or bust?
I guess I kind of did it in my first year when I applied to like all those companies. It's like not a great idea.
No.
And it's kind of a toxic culture that Waterloo has. I don't want to say people shouldn't do it if they really, really want to go to California for some reason, but you shouldn't like put your self-worth on Cali or busting, and you should recognize that it's like a huge risk if you decide to do it.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like for my group of friends, we didn't really care about Cali or bust. It was more of like America or bust. We all kind of wanted to get into an American company. And I have mixed feelings about Cali or bust because on one hand, I'm like, yeah, it's toxic. People are like putting their self-worth on something that's not really that important. And it's more vain than anything because it's like they just want like the gloat or the money from America. But like what really is important is the skills you learn and the technologies you learn and stuff like that. But on the other hand, I do see if you like have a bunch of companies in America in mind that you want to go to, you know, there's this ancient story about, I can't remember exactly which civilizations, maybe it was like the Romans and the Greeks, but one of them like shows up on the other shores with a bunch of ships and then they burn the ships. So it's basically like they can't get back. And it's kind of like supposed to be a motivating factor to make sure that they win. And I kind of understand that mentality. So if you're going to be like, you're going to be doing that and you're like, you know what, because I'm taking such a big risk here and I'm like showing up on the shores and going to burn my ship, I better like have a bunch of people critique my resume, better make sure it passes ATS systems. I better make sure that like I'm applying to specific jobs I know I'll get, and I'll be putting so many hours into crafting like cover letters and stuff like that. Then it's like, okay, this guy's taking it really seriously. He probably will get a job, and he's aware that he's burned his ship, right? Or she's burnt her ship. And I don't think that's how people do it. I think they're at a party, like drinking a beer, like, yeah, man, I'm just not going to apply to Toronto jobs. I'm better than that. That's the big difference, or the big like mixed feelings I have about Cali or bust.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, I guess it's just like your mentality about it. One is like you said, motivating factor, and it's putting yourself in a position where you have to win. There's no like other alternative. Besides just like completely losing, I guess, busting. But yeah, the other one I think is just like Waterloo's like weird obsession with it. With I guess it's not weird. It makes sense to me, but I saw a lot of people come into like first year classes or second year classes and just like put their entire self-worth on getting into like Cali for Google or something. And they would walk in the class be like, oh, I just had my interview with Google. Yeah, it went really well. And everyone else like, well, I think a lot of people that also are going to Cali look at them, they're like, yeah, nice, man, I'm going to Cali too. But for me, I was seeing that and it was a big blow to my own like self-image, I guess.
Yeah, so what was I saying? Do you remember what I was saying?
You worked with the dude from Yahoo.
Yeah. So he got a full-time job at Microsoft, and I hadn't even considered myself smart enough to work there. And then I applied, and I got the job too, to my surprise. And it's like, I was worried. I was more so like I had determined that all of those jobs weren't for me because I wasn't smart enough to do them. But then I was like, I worked with this guy. He's not like, I mean, he's a smart guy, but he's not significantly smarter than me. Like, surely if he got the job, I could get the job, right? I was more worried about like my path to not even necessarily like a FAANG company, but just to like a successful business, like my path to being a successful developer. And I feel like I worked in a lot of different industries, and I worked in a lot of companies that were not very glamorous, but they ended up at my full-time job in something that I think a lot of people would consider glamorous. Mm-hmm. So it's more about the journey. It doesn't matter if you don't get Google today or you don't get Microsoft today. This is one of the things I mentioned in one of my videos. It's like, what are your career goals? Because if your career goal is going to be getting a job at Google, and you can get that in your internship, like your career, it's all downhill from here. Like, where do you go from there? So you have to like think like, where do I want my career to be? Which companies do I think will actually help me attain that? And maybe like Google, just having the name on your resume will help you attain that. Maybe it will. I don't know. But it's all about the end goal and having a journey of doing like 6 co-ops where you try different things and you kind of figure out where you want to be. And then you try going for one of those companies, maybe when you're looking for full times, maybe 2 years when you're like after school. Like that's just as valuable of a career journey than getting Google on your first internship and going back for 6.
That's one thing I noticed actually is I felt like different people had different progressions as I was like explaining it to someone. Some people like skipped to Google on the first internship. And for myself, I feel like it was a more, I guess, natural progression where it was a small company and then a slightly bigger company and then a slightly bigger company. And there was no like jumping, like huge jump between any level. Each one was like a slightly better company than the last company. And the truth is that you can always work for FAANG after you've done your internships as well. Like people switch companies all the time in tech. It's very common to career hop. And one thing is that like I was 17 when I went to university. So people forget how young they were when they started, and to expect yourself, like think about that now when you're older, or even if you're 17, think about the fact that you're only 17. You're not 20, you're not 21, you're not really worrying about any of the rest of your life yet, and you're trying to get into Google. Like that's a huge thing to try to achieve when you're 17 or 18. So go easy on yourself.
Go easy on yourself for sure. And it's more about the natural progression. As long as you're doing better every time, then why does it matter what that other person is doing? You know, like if that's your goal to also do what they're doing, then you'll get there. But I think you really need to like really consider what your goal is, because those people I think are going for the clout or the money, which is fine. They can do that if they want. But like, what are they going to be doing in 5 to 10 years? Are they still going to be working there? Do they have a career goal path in mind? Probably not.
Hedonistic treadmill. Doesn't like whatever you achieve, you always want something else, right? So
yeah, that's true.
I guess kind of on this like train of thought, one thing that I've heard too from some people is they seem to believe that like if you go to Waterloo, you should work at these companies, or like if that they don't go to Waterloo, that they can't work at these companies, which is totally untrue. People can, there's like a lot more ways to achieve things than people believe there to be. I have a friend that went to like University of Windsor, which is from my hometown. And
oh wait, bro, I'm from Windsor.
No shit, are you serious? Yeah, so I have a friend from Windsor that went to the university here, and like in his own words, not many people are like trying to get into these companies. The mentality is not one of like applying to internships at all even, or if they are, it's definitely not applying to FAANG. But he's worked for like Google and Shopify and GitHub and like tons of big companies, and it was all like totally from his own hard work. It had nothing to do with like the biggest challenge I think was getting the first company onto the resume. But like if people don't get into Waterloo, or even if they do, there's other ways to achieve things than just having good grades or getting good companies and grinding leak code all day.
Yeah. Dude, I agree. I always like, I kind of err on the side of caution in terms of like what you're doing to prepare yourself for internships. Probably it's less important to be doing lead code until you have the interview. More important to be working on side projects. And when I talk to people about side projects, I'm like, actually solve a real world problem. Like if you're like a first year and you're like, man, I only really know how to do Sudoku solvers or like print things to the console, then yeah, that's fine, man. You do you. But when you're getting to these upper grades, maybe you're in second year, you have to start building products that actually solve real world problems, and they don't have to solve every single person's problem in the world. Maybe it's just your own problem. Maybe you have a unique problem where you're like, you know what? I want to get this data every single day. A push notification to my phone. I really care about this data. Nobody else really cares about it. For example, I had a friend who actually goes to Windsor who did this for like goalies. He calls it Goalie Watch, which basically like he does fantasy hockey and he needs to know like if his goalie is starting or not. So he built like this system that actually would just send him a notification to let him know if his goalie is on, and if he's not going to be starting that day, he'll just go ahead and swap out the goalie or something like that. I'm not big into fantasy, but and I was like, that's perfect, man. You've solved a problem that you actually have, and you've like done it with a unique solution. That's better. That's going to look better than like Sudoku solver or like the 50th weather app that somebody else puts on their resume, you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's great advice. And it kind of ties into you mentioned the upside of Cali or bust, which is the like burning the ships kind of mentality. And I mentioned that Cali or bust was toxic, and like I think it is definitely a mix of what we both said. With the universities that you end up going to, the biggest difference I think is the mentality of the people you'll be around. If you're at Waterloo, everyone is going to be like trying to Cali or bust or to get into these big companies, and you're by like osmosis going to want to do the same. Yep. Because you're going to feel like you're being left behind, and your standards are going to be somewhere that is like maybe a bit higher. If you're at a different university and no one is thinking of that, and they're just like hanging out on the weekends, then it's going to be way more difficult to spend your weekends applying to companies or building a side project.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think they say that you're the combination, or you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you spend time with 5 people that are really like go-getters, they want to work at the companies they want to work at, Google, Facebook, whatever it is, even if it's like a specific company for a specific reason. Like I have a friend that works at Duolingo because she loves the design of Duolingo. Great, you know? Like they're very driven, they're very motivated. You're going to be the average of those people. But if you work around those, exactly what you said, if you're around people that just want to hang out, then you're just going to want to hang out. So I want to ask what your favorite classes are like, or what have your favorite classes been so far at Waterloo, and also what is online school like, because I'm very skeptical.
Cool. So my overall time favorite class was actually a music class. It was history of pop music, which was just basically like a dude telling a story for an entire lecture. It was great. But on a more like serious, less elective, what was my favorite class? Operating systems with Leslie Eisted.
Oh, yeah.
That was really good because she's just an amazing professor. So
Leslie is the best, man. I had Leslie too. Fantastic professor.
It's amazing how that class could go either way. With a different professor, it might not be that enjoyable because there's a lot of grinding and like a lot of actual workload, and a lot of the concepts are weird. But with her, it's like she lays things out in such a way or explains things in such a way that is interesting and you want to keep coming back. So
yeah, and she cares a lot about the students. You can tell from the way she conducts herself. And And I should, I'll give a few shout outs to some of my favorite professors too. Leslie is like definitely top 3 in no particular order though. Got to give a shout out to like Dave Tompkins. Do you have Dave?
Yeah,
oh, man.
Dave.
Peter Burr for compilers. I don't know if you had.
I haven't had him yet,
compilers.
but I've heard that he's really good.
Oh, compilers is a fantastic course. Wait, not compilers. What am I talking about? Concurrency.
Yeah, parallelism and yeah.
Concurrency, yeah. There's one other professor that I think is like fantastic. Oh, you know who it is? Troy Vasiga.
Oh, I haven't had Troy. No, not yet.
Yeah, I had him for 241, which is like the mandatory compilers course.
Mm.
Is it? It's one of those ones.
I think 241 is it the logic class?
That's 245.
Oh, okay. Man, I'm getting...
I think.
My memory's not what it used to be, eh? CS 241. Foundations of Sequential Programming.
And then there was... I remember there was another professor that did 246 when I was there, and I thought he was fantastic, but I can't remember his name. I think he was Indian.
Nomer?
Nomer! That's
yes.
his name. Of course, Nomer. Man, all of those professors, I hope they watch this, and I hope it brings a smile to their face that they were fantastic professors, and I would recommend anybody go to those classes.
Yes, if they do, shout out to Carmen Bruni as well. You made second year great.
What does Carmen teach?
He taught 245, and he also taught I guess it was 241, yeah, the one that you're talking about, where you kind of learned about assembly, and yeah, he taught that as well.
Nice. Well, I don't know if he probably was teaching something else when I was there, but yeah, man, a lot of good professors there. Few bad ones, but I'm not going to mention the bad ones.
Yeah,
but mostly,
they know who they are.
Yeah, seriously though, the bad ones are the ones that like, bro, check out your Rate My Professors. You know who you are.
Yeah. And then online school. You said you're skeptical about it. I actually really enjoyed it.
Really?
I think that it's really dependent on what kind of person you are and what your learning style is. I thought I would hate it because I wouldn't be able to like see anyone and I would just be isolated. But I felt like I was able to kind of create a separation. Like, I'm going to start school at this time and I'm going to end it at this time. And I'm going to just work for that entire time. And maybe what some people would say is like unhealthy 6 hours of sitting. But yeah, for myself, I like being able to do that and also have complete control over my schedule. So
nice.
Because you can't really miss a lecture because they're all recorded. Yeah. I could watch them all at like 3 p.m. or I could watch them all at 10 a.m. like first thing in the morning or something. So for myself, it worked better, but I know a lot of people had trouble motivating themselves to keep up with the content.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. You probably actually are in a great position for online school because you've kind of already learned your like responsibility lesson. A lot of these people that haven't learned that lesson yet, they're like, oh great, a free pass to not study or to do whatever I want, and then like probably don't take the courses that seriously. I would love the ability though to put a professor in double speed so you can kind of just get on to the next thing. That would be fantastic.
I did do a lot of that. That was people thought all my professors were on crack or something when they would walk by.
All right. Do I have any other topics? I have one other thing I wanted to ask you about. But before that, I would just mention that I'm doing a resume critique giveaway on my channel. For like the 500 sub mark, I was like doing a giveaway, doing like 2 people. I think there's only like 20 applicants right now. So if you go apply, you have like a 1 in 10 chance of getting a resume critique. So if any of your viewers like want a resume critique, send them to that video. I'll put it in the description or something like that. But on top of that, I wanted to ask, I started this series called, I've only done 1 episode, called Resume or Co-op Horror Stories, just because I wanted to like destigmatize the fact that some people don't have like FAANG internships that are all like puppies and rainbows and free food and all that kind of stuff. I wondered if you had any like bad co-op experiences.
Yeah. Let me think about how to tell this without calling anyone out in particular.
Yeah. That's the trick, man. That's the trick.
They're probably not going to see it, whatever. So at one of my unnamed internships, we had a like SRE, I guess you would say. I'm sure he was like a great SRE, but he didn't really like it when the interns were asking him questions about things. And since this was like an earlier internship, I didn't know as much about like the stacks or technologies that go into building applications. So
Right.
at one point we had an issue with, I believe, a certificate or something where we had launched like this web page, and no matter how many times we pushed or redeployed, our changes weren't live in the browser. And so we went up to him and said, hey, there's an issue here. We're not sure what's going on. And he was basically said, oh, just keep like checking it out. I don't have time for this, and it's probably like a mistake that you made. So we spent like 2 weeks trying to figure out what had gone wrong and why our changes weren't like showing. And then at the end of the whole thing, it turns out that I think he either forgot to issue the certificate or point something at something else. So because he wasn't willing to listen to the interns, it created like 2 weeks of confusion and like self-doubt, and also thinking that I was like screwing up this internship because man, like, oh, I must be terrible if I can't even ship anything for 2 weeks. So
here's an important question. Did he acknowledge that it was his fault and apologize?
No.
See, that's what pisses me off. Like,
Yeah.
man, if you're busy, I'm like, yeah, I get it. Like, I'm busy too sometimes. For 2 weeks, not being able to have any time for you is pretty extreme, I would say. But like, man, if it's your fault, like, own up.
Yeah. That was probably the big thing. It was just that we just discovered, oh, it's working now. Oh, he changed this thing. And it was like never like mentioned. He never came up and was like, oh, you should try that thing again. It probably works now. Like, my bad. If he did that, like the whole thing, it would have been fine. It happens. Yeah. But no, he never, I'm sure he knew that he fixed it, but he just didn't feel like telling us. So
This the worst kind of boss is the one that blames things on the constituents. Is constituents the right word there? on their employees, and doesn't accept the fault when it's theirs. So yeah, I feel that. I've had that.
Yeah, I'm sure it's probably a fairly common thing. This isn't like a super crazy horror story. I'm not sure what the other one that someone told on the channel was, but
the first episode was just me. I was just talking. I have two internships in particular that were like back to back, pretty bad. And I was like considering leaving computer science because I'm like, I don't want a job like this. But then my next one was like fantastic. So I just got unlucky with 2 bad ones in a row.
yeah. Well, it's a good thing you didn't decide to leave and you stuck it out, eh?
Yeah, I'm definitely thanking my earlier self for that now. Okay, man. Thank you for like all this information. I feel like if I was to watch this exact podcast interview when I was, in first year, I would have gotten so much value out of it. So like, I think you have some fantastic content on your channel, and the content you shared here was just as good. So thank you for that.
Thank you, man. And I really like your channel, and I like what you're doing. Like, there's a lot of people that are in positions where they just don't know things that I feel like so many other people know. Like it's like life experiences that people could learn a lot from. So it's good that you're doing that. And I really enjoyed this. It was kind of fun talking about this stuff. So
yeah, man, we should do another collab sometime. I had a lot of fun.
For sure. Cool.
Yeah.